Hi, second graders. Look, we're back. How cool is this? Do you remember this day? This was a crazy hair day at morning meeting time when we were pairing up. All right, take a look. Super fun, right? And if you're not pictured in this one, I'll try to find one where you are. All right, and I'll have some fun and interesting ones up for our Zooms and our class meetings so we can pretend, if we can't actually be together, we can pretend like we are. All right, I miss you very much, and I'm excited today to bring to you chapters 3 and 4 of Flat Stanley in Space. I'm gonna have to change the background now though, because the book pictures will not show up very well if I use that. All right, but we'll get back some awesome pictures back on the screen very soon. All right, so in chapters 1 and 2, we found out that the President of the United States has just hired the Lamb Chop family to go to outer space to this planet called Terra. Craziness, right? So in the beginning of chapter 3, we find the Lamb Chop family in the space shuttle. Let's find out what happens. Taking off. 10, said the voice of mission control. The countdown had begun. When it reached 0, Chief Pilot Stanley Lambchop would press the start button, and the Star Scout would blast off for Terra. 9. Strapped into their seats, the Lambchops held their breaths, each thinking very different thoughts. Stanley was wondering if the Terrans would mind that Earth had just sent an ordinary family. Suppose they were big stuck-ups and expected a general or a TV star, or even the president. Suppose 8, said Control, and Stanley fixed his eyes on the panel before him. Mr. Lambchop was thinking that serving one's country was noble, but this was a bit much. How did these things happen? Off to an unknown planet? The entire family? Other families didn't have a sun become flat. Other families didn't find genies in the house. Oh well, Mr. Lambchop sighed. 7, said Control. Mrs. Lambchop thought that Mr. Lambchop seemed fretful, worried. But why, now that the Star Scout looked so nice? Thanks to her, in fact. They may call it a spaceship, she said when she first saw it. But where's the space? Just one room? And all gray? Drab, I say. Much of the training at the Space Center, however, was physical, and Mrs. Lambchop, who jogged and exercised regularly, quickly passed the tests required. In the days that followed, while the others were being made fit, she used her free time to make the Star Scout more like home. Only so much weight was permitted, but she managed a bathroom scale for the shower and a plastic curtain, pretty shades for the portholes, a Venetian blind for the magnifying exploration window, and posters of Mexico and France. 6, 5, 4, 3. Mrs. Lambchop made sure her purse was snug beneath her seat. Isn't that funny? She's being all prim and proper and getting the spaceship ready like a house. Arthur, by nature lazy, was thinking that he was glad to be done with all the jogging, jumping, climbing ladders, and scaling walls. When he was super strong, thanks to the genie, it would have been easy. But for just plain Arthur Lambchop, he thought it was tiring. 2, said Control. Good luck, everybody. 1. And they're off. Boy, I wonder what's going to happen next. What a crazy adventure. Pay attention, dear, Mrs. Lambchop told Stanley. 0, said Control, and Stanley pressed the start button. Vroom! Rocket soaring, the Star Scout rose from his launching pad. Vroom, vroom! Gaining speed, it soared higher and higher, carrying the Lambchops toward the farness where Terra lay. Can you imagine what that must feel like? To be catapulted into outer space in your space shuttle. Wow. Chapter 4, in space. I'll just flip this omelet, said Mrs. Lambchop, making breakfast in the Star Scout. And then, oh dear, the omelet hovered like a frisbee in the air above her. Mostly, however, after weeks in space, the Lambchops remembered that gravity, the force that held things down, did not exist beyond Earth's atmosphere. She just must have forgotten them. Lamb Chop often read now, Mr. Lambchop often read now with his hands clasped behind his head, allowing his book to float before him. And Stanley and Arthur greatly enjoyed pushing from their chairs to drift like feathers across the room. Would you like to live in an anti-gravity or very little gravity place? Be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Raising her pan, Mrs. Lambchop brought down the omelet. After breakfast, what? She said. A game of Monopoly? Please, not again, Arthur sighed. If I had known this adventure would be so boring, I'd never have come. The worst part, Stanley said, is not knowing how long it will last. The beginning wasn't boring, Arthur said, as they began their breakfast. The beginning was fun. The first days had been tremendously exciting. They had spent many hours in the Star Scout's magnifying window, watching the bright globe of Earth grow steadily smaller until it seemed at last only a pale marble in the black of space. And there had been many special lights to see: the starry beauty of the Milky Way, the planets, red Mars, giant Jupiter, cloudy Venus, Saturn with its shining rings. So think about how far away from Earth they're getting now. The third evening they appeared on TV news broadcast on Earth. Word of their voyage had been released to the press, and all over the world, people were eager to hear how this exciting adventure was proceeding. Standing before the spaceship's camera, the Lambchops said they felt fine, looking forward to meeting the Terrans, and would report nightly while they remained in TV range. The fourth evening, they floated before the camera, demonstrating their weightlessness. This was greatly appreciated on Earth, and they floated again the following day. By the sixth evening, however, they were hard-pressed to liven their appearances. Mr. Lambchop recited a baseball poem, Casey at Bat. Stanley juggled tennis balls, but the Earth audience, knowing about the weightlessness, saw the balls float when he tossed them up. So he wasn't really juggling. It wasn't quite as much skill involved when they floated by themselves. Arthur did imitations of a rooster, a dog, and a man stuck in a phone booth. After this, while Mrs. Lambchop was singing her college song, while Mrs. Lambchop was singing her college song, he went behind the plastic curtain to undress for a shower and accidentally pulled the shower curtain down. He was mortified, and she tried later to comfort him. We will be remembered, Arthur, for our time in space, she said. No one will care about a curtain. I will be remembered forever, Arthur said. 100 million people saw me in my underwear. The next day was Stanley's birthday, and just after dinner, the screen lit up. There was the president in his shirt sleeves behind his desk in Washington, D.C. Well, here I am, working late again, the president said. It's a tough job, believe me. Happy birthday, Stanley Lambchop. I've arranged a surprise. First, your friends from school. There was a silence for a moment, broken only by the clearing of throats, and then from all the millions of miles away came the voices of Stanley's classmates, singing, Happy birthday, dear Stanley, happy birthday to you. Stanley was tremendously pleased. Thanks, everybody, he said. You too, Mr. President. That was just the USA part, said the president. Ready over there in London, Queen? We are, indeed, the Queen's voice said cheerfully. And now, Master Lambchop, our famous Westminster Boys' Choir. From England, the beautiful voices of the famous choir sang Happy Birthday, Stanley all over again. And then other children sang it from Germany, Spain, and France. All this attention to Stanley made Arthur jealous. And when the president said, By the way, Arthur, you entertained us wonderfully the other night, he was sure this was a tease about his appearance in underwear. But he was wrong. Those imitations, the president said, especially the fellow in the phone booth, very good. Indeed, the Queen added from England, we were greatly amused. Oh, thank you, said Arthur. Cheered? The screen had gone blank. They had traveled too far. There would be no more voices from Earth, no voices but their own, until they heard what the Tyrans had to say. Suppose the Tyrans have forgotten we're coming, Stanley said. We might just sail around in space forever. They had finished the breakfast omelet and were now setting out the Monopoly board because there was nothing more interesting to do. They don't even know our names, Arthur said. What will they call us? Earth people, said a deep voice. Very probably, said Mr. Lambchop. Earth people seems... Who said that? Not me, said both Stanley and Arthur. Not I, said Mrs. Lambchop, correcting. But who? Earth people. The voice, louder now, came from the Star Scouts radio. Greetings from the great planet Tira and its mighty people. Do you hear? Oh my, Mr. Lambchop turned up the volume. It's them. They, said Mrs. Lambchop. For heaven's sakes, Harriet, Mr. Lambchop said, and he spoke loudly into the microphone. Hello, Tira. Earth people here. Party of 4. Peace-loving family. Peace-loving, said the voice. Good. So is mighty Tira. Where are you, Earth people? Stanley checked his star maps. We're just where the tail of Ralph's comet meets star number 3,047. Now what? Right, said Tyrann's voice. Keep going till you pass a star formation that looks like a foot. You can't miss it. Then, just past a lopsided little white moon, start down. You'll see a pointy mountain, then a big field. Land there. See you soon, Earth people. You bet, Mr. Lambchop said, and turned to his family. The first contact with another planet. We are making history. They passed the foot-shaped star formation, then the lopsided moon, and Stanley piloted the Star Scout down. The darkness of space vanished as it descended, and at last the Lambchop saw clearly the planet it had taken so long to reach. Tira was smallish as planets go, but nicely round and quite pretty, all in shades of brown with markings not unlike the oceans and continents of Earth. A pointy mountain came into sight, and beyond it a big field. There, Stanley pressed the landing button. Vroom, went the Star Scout's rockets. The spaceship hovered, then touched down. Peering out, the Lambchop saw only a brown field with tan trees at the far side and brownish hills beyond. Curious, said Mr. Lambchop. Where are... Suddenly a message came, but not the sort they expected. Surrender, Earth people, said the radio. Your spaceship is trapped by our unbreakable trapping cable. You are prisoners of Tira. Surrender. Uh-oh. Not what anyone was expecting, was it? I thought Tira was supposed to be this friendly place for Earthlings to make connections with the Tyrans. Not if Stanley and his family are going to be prisoners. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I can't wait to see tomorrow in chapter 5 called The Tyrans. What is going to happen? How are the Lambchops going to get out of this sticky situation? So far from anybody that can help them on planet Earth. We'll wait and see tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy perhaps the book outside. And happy Earth Day, everyone.